Hey fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. Today I wanted to talk about how rackets have changed. They've changed quite a bit. There are arguments to say that they haven't changed as much as they could perhaps, but I think in recent years we've seen an evolution of the game, both on the pro level, then trickling down to our more humble club level. And I see that kind of everywhere I go when I get pro player specs sent via Instagram. I'm seeing lower swing weights in general for the pros, and I think that's also happening then for the more recreational player frames. So you see pros actually use stock frames or frames they changed to pretty recently. It's hard to believe at first when you're used to these very heavy swing weights that older pros like Murray and Novak use. They use these control frames, 95 square inches, 360 Novak swing weights, and is even up in the 370. So these swing weights are to create power for a control frame. But the younger generation, we've talked about Alcaraz before. I know it's hard to believe, but from his friend that I had a beer with, we talked about frames. The grip size is 4. It's a stock frame pretty much, so the specs are not outrageous. I've seen other pros also use these very low swing weights for pros, like so 293 was the listed swing weight from Alcaraz. You add around 30 points, maybe 35 with the thicker string, so you're going to get it up to around 330. And that's what you see several pros use, and that happens sometimes on the WTA tour. We have Iga's. This is her signature model. I'm not sure if she's added some weight or just gets a heavier batch, but it's 299 swing weight without strings. That's going to be 30 points approx. It's a 330. So you see many pros are hovering around the 330 mark today when they used to be 350. And Federer is 340. Depends a little bit of how whippy your swing is and what you feel comfortable with when it comes to meeting the pace of your opponent. I don't think a guy like Shapovalov has a huge swing weight either, or Kokkinakis. Kyrgios is around the 340 mark as well. So you're seeing that 330, 340 and not going above 340 is becoming quite common among pros. And they can generate so much pace with their swing. That's the difference from the good old days when they had a bit of a flatter swing, they had heavier rackets in general, and they needed the weight to make the racket more powerful. You can see that in these old school frames. I picked one of the most classical rackets to put here. It's the Pro Staff 85. It was used by a wide group of players. Sampras, he added loads of lead tape here to make it up to 400 swing weight and hit bombs with it. He really regret not going to a more modern racket, and I can understand that because I think he'd kept winning if he'd went to something that's easier to use, like Roger did, who kind of reignited his career with the Pro Staff RF 97. That was a little bit more forgiving thanks to the head size. So Sampras used this, Edberg used this for a serve and volley game where this probably shines the most, I would say. And Edberg didn't use the hefty swing weight of Sampras. But then you also have Jim Courier, who used this with this very Western and quite whippy topspin game. How he could contact the ball so well with this frame is very impressive, because that's a more modern way of playing, and you usually want something like this or slightly smaller. So this is from 2003, if I'm not mistaken, and it's the Pure Drive team, one of the best Pure Drives in my opinion, and it's a modern frame. So how has this evolved over the last 20 years of rackets? Well, I think the dampening in these types of frames is really what's happening. They're becoming more comfortable, using more technology to dampen vibrations, because these frames, the old Aero Pro Drive that Rafa uses, the first edition, they are quite firm and there's not much dampening going on. You get a lot of feedback from the frame, but feedback is vibration, can lead to arm issues, wrist issues, whatever, depending on your physique, how well you take care of yourself, if you go to the physio, what strings you use, how you hit the ball, if you miss it a lot, and so on. So the evolution has happened. Rackets head sizes have become bigger, swing weights have gone down, and even for these types of frames that were already powerful, there were fewer then, there are more of them now, and they have better dampening technologies overall. So you're not going to see the same feeling, a little bit more muted feeling. One of the kind of best examples of a modern frame today, I think, is the Yonex ISO 98, which gives you power, but still in a slightly smaller head size. Isometric head shape helps the sweet spot to be a bit bigger. It has quite a muted feel, so it's pretty good comfort. The Boom Pro is kind of similar to that, in the similar vein. So you're seeing these modern frames, and you're not seeing many 95 square-inch rackets, for example. So the game has evolved. It's faster, more intense, more physical, more spin-oriented, and the players need to be able to swing the racket faster, adjust the racket head, and they can swing so fast today with so much topspin that the ball goes in anyway, which is a big difference from the good old days of tennis rackets. So if you're a control player, I think you're going to be happy with the 98. There are many different 98 square-inch rackets. I like sometimes to have a bit more power, like an IGA, for example, or the Extreme Tour. But what I tend to go back to is my customized Prestige MP. It's because I'm an old school guy. I also like the thinner beam. That's me. This is also kind of a more modern approach to the Prestige because it's a bit bigger in head size than what it used to be, which is 95. So Prestige used to be 95, now it's 98. So rackets for control are usually 98. Rackets for a bit more pace and spin are 100 square inches. Rackets for players who want a bit more forgiveness, a little bit more power spin, they go 102, 104, up to 107 square inches. And then you get more kind of game improvement rackets, that's 107, 110, 115, and then up to the Big Bubba, which is 137. But you're not going to see a lot of 85, 90, 95 square inch rackets anymore. I think the 95 you might see is the V-Core 95 from Yonex, and that's a little bit bigger thanks to the isometric head shape. But overall, I think 98 is the new norm, and that's what we're going to see both on the tour and among club players. I like a 98, one-handed backhand feels more natural to me, and then most players you will see be happy with 100. And now you can get a 98 with more power, like the ISO 98 or the Pure Aero VS that Alcaraz and Holger Rune is using. So you have options. The difficult part is finding like where are you on this scale of options. And I hope a lot of the content I create on my YouTube channel and on tennisnerd.net can help guide you. But I just wanted to point out that swing weights are lower. Don't try to play with a huge swing weight unless you're Andy Murray or someone who definitely wants it and feel like you play the best tennis with a big swing weight, because even the pros today are swinging faster, moving faster, and going down in swing weights. That's the same on the WTA Tour. I mentioned Raducano's specs, I mentioned Swiatek's specs, and I think Swiatek is actually in the heavier spec range on the WTA Tour. So don't be too worried about adding a lot of weight to your frame. Take it easy with that. If you feel like you need it, do it. Always some small customization is good, especially if you need to match two rackets that are off spec. But I think most players can be quite happy with lower swing weight, whether that's 315 strong or 330 strong. It depends. I think 330, then you're a pretty advanced player and you can maneuver the racket. I'm even toying with the idea that this, which is my kind of standard frame, needs to maybe go down a bit, and that's why I'm toying around with something that's a bit more powerful, such as the IGA, for example, or the TF40 1619. So I'm also moving away slowly from heavier frames. I always liked heavier frames. I always felt like I got a heavier ball, but when I'm playing better players, as I'm progressing in my own tennis journey, I'm noticing that it's very difficult to swing and to feel like you get anything for free. You need some help from the racket these days, and I think most of you will notice that too. I know there are some purists who think that rackets were much better back in the good old days. I completely understand why. The feeling was good, just like a pure sensation of the tennis ball. But today you need a bit of help. Those rackets won't cut it in most cases anymore. So I definitely think we're seeing a trend that's just going to keep happening, where you have players using much lower swing weights. And I've seen that all over the tour. I'm going to collect some more data on it. I talked to some good, strong juniors in Marbella and other pro players. And many pros are now around 295 unstrung, which then with strings is 325 to 330, which is a manageable swing weight, but you need to be able to have a pretty good technique in footwork to handle it. But you can actually buy a stock frame today, like a Radical Pro, or some Blade 1820, and then you have a frame that's ready for really advanced tennis. You don't need to customize it even unless you want to match it. That was the message of this video. I hope you found it useful. Check out my affiliates in the description if you want to support the work I do or buy a racket, a service, or so on. Also plenty of deals on the Tennis Nerd Deals page, and I have a Patreon for more content like this. That is all. Have a nice day, and don't forget to play some tennis.